Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are jumping into what I think is the most fun part of the class here is the 3D construction segment. So I've provided some uh, copies of the resources that have been handed out. They're in the Google Drive, and I'm trying this open broadcast studio, this OBS software that's free, in order to give you the top of the sculpting stand that's right here, little sculpting bench. And then I also have down below the PowerPoint slide. So if I go down here, I can actually go through the slide that's been provided. We'll build on it throughout the semester. It should contain everything that is really the main principles of the class, things that you want to take away with you and make sure you kind of get up to the final before you leave. And so today we're going to focus on, since most of you are still new to clay and most likely also wire sculpture and armatures, let's go through some step-by-step techniques for you. So I'm going to go back and forth here a little bit. And it's one of the things we looked at in class so far. Let's see if I can get this around here, just in case it helps a little bit. All right, so this would be something you'll move towards for the midterm. One of the techniques we looked at in class was how to twine up the armature, and some of these are in various stages. Some of them are really old, some of them are done by students, most of them are done by from myself. So this one has the JB Quick, the JB Well, which is the liquidy two-part epoxy that you can get in there. So if when you built your base, and if you had any hard time at all getting the wire to stay in the wood, if you maybe the wood's really thin, so you're better off with a thicker wood, but you know the round bases are what we got for you guys. So you know, thank you to the school for providing. But if you want to go get some scraps down at the store, I still recommend just go down to the hardware store and just grab some of these scraps, and that way you have a little bit more thickness to try and wedge that wire in there. But if the wire doesn't stay, for your simple wire speed sculptures, and you'll want to use the same stuff which we'll use for midterm with your first character, which is the let's see, where's my two-part epoxy? Did have it here a second ago. I'll grab it later. So let's focus though today on the wire sculpture. So this is what we're going to recap, and then there's another one. It's really simple. And you know, if the hole's not that good, you know, drill another one and don't go quite as wide. Remember, if you go in, it's too tight, you could put the drill bit in there and kind of uh, work it around, rotate just a little bit at a time, pulling the handle really slowly, and that should get it in there for you. So we're looking at the physical personal traits. So the previous docs we had kind of went through the process of character building, and we're focusing on, you know, we use these little myconid characters. I like to use these for class demos just because they're a little liberating from anatomy, and they're, you know, I've been working on this particular idea for many years, and it's something many students in games animation and whatnot kind of gravitate towards. So it's kind of a fun project to play with. But we looked at, you know, the line of action, the silhouette. So if I go down here, we collected some good reference and made sure we have the what or the who of the character, looking at their posture, their narrative, what they're doing in the story, making sure they're iconic. When you get into the silhouette phase, you want to kind of push those silhouettes, making sure that when you are doing your gestures, you're using nice long kind of quick strokes. I mean, you're working at thumbnail size, right? It's like not much bigger than my thumbnail. But when you do the stroke, you want to ghost the stroke down first and try and get that. Now, these should translate directly into your little wire sculptures that you're making right now, right? So the wire sculpture, you want to measure the distance, you know, between the shoulders and the joints. You know, if you have like elbows and knees and ankles and things like that. But then when you pose it, then you want to really follow the same techniques you do with your gesture drawings into your gestural sculpts. And that's going to translate over into your clay as well. And you start doing that with the clay. And then for the other classes, and just for really for any of the storytelling classes for games or animation, you want to look at the world as well. And I do level mapping, world design, the environment. If you look up environment in the dictionary, I believe it still lists the environment includes the creatures and living things within it, not just the inanimate objects or non-sentient things. So looking at these things as like, harvesters or explorers or whatever, and the cast of characters, if you're doing world building, can get bigger and bigger, and that also is on display with some of the reference I collected on the Myconids. And so, think of their social aspect, what they do, as well as their psychological traits. And their psychological traits will definitely get into the poses. In terms of style, you want to have some sort of idea. So I just provided some reference boards, and I collect, dozens and then hundreds, and that turns maybe into thousands of these images. And so what I've learned over the years is to collate, to condense, and pick the best ones on an idea. Otherwise, you're just going to be swimming around back and forth on the idea and going back and forth. You can see some of the reference boards like behind me. Um, I have done so many of these that they build up this great library, but then when you want to go do a new idea, you can just kind of pick some very specific ideas and try and execute. And then if I find something that's kind of along the same vein, you don't want to be shy, don't worry about copying anyone. You could just say, oh yeah, of course, someone else has explored mushroom people before. So this was a cool little project I put up. The artist name should be in there, which was actually a 3D printing design. Here's the slides in duplicate down on the screen below. So the first pass on the 2D on the mush was to explore something between, the 2D design Pixar, something more that's more cute, and move that over into a design that is something more along the lines with what I would want to make personally. So it kind of went around. You can see in the screen below. These are some of the pictures. This is a really tiny drawing. I think it was maybe only that big, but then I scanned it, blow it up. You can see I did add a little bit of environment, little vegetation areas. You'll see this other one going. This red pencil might show up a little bit. This one's exploring pose more, kind of a like Goofy is looking at this as more of like a Looney Tunes or something like that, and then exploring the overlapping shapes of the limbs, and then working with what would happen if they're too symmetrical versus asymmetry in the foot and the palm of the hand and the bottom of the foot, and how the elbows would work. And then also here you'll see the foot. Whenever you're doing a pose like this, you're trying to get the construction part, not necessarily the storytelling pose or animation 3D model sheets, but the constructive 3D model sheets you would 3D model or sculpt with. And so whenever you're doing that, you'll usually want to put a side view from the front. You're not going to be able to see the foot very well, so always do a turn on the foot. And then for something like this, also for most avian or winged creatures, a top-down view would be good to have for the top of that mushroom, so I would draw that on the side. And so this one turned into, this little one turned into this larger one that I did, and then I explored a little bit more what the hands would be. I already have the feet kind of defined pretty well on this. And so, although I did like the little pot belly one with the big cute Pixar eyes, we're gonna try and explore. I could go back, and as you're doing these speed sculpts and you're still exploring, you're welcome to explore different ideas and even different characters. You're not really locked in yet. You're supposed to be kind of taking the sketch idea. These are, I wanted to reiterate, these are resources that you have available on the drive, so be sure that you use these and print these out. I'm going to pull this up here for the gesture. There's some of the storytelling poses. There's the other slides we just looked at. So when I get into there, I'm going to be really focused on, I think, some of these early ones that which are all over the place. Like some of them had no arms, no hands. Some of them had more kind of slaggy or bent, kind of gnarly type poses. So this is a good sheet right here. And these pictures are studies that have the measurements in head. So your head height's always important when you're starting to construct out what you want to make. And what these also provide solid measurements to get a little bit more accurate with your wire sculpt. So you can see for this one, what I did was I did the two halves. I go from wrist to shoulder to neck, down to crotch, out to the hip and down, and then mirror, and then always leave yourself some extra for the foot, and then mirror do the second one on the same way. So it goes up, ankle, hip, into spine. So these actually crisscross each other, and then I use floral wire to combine at the neck and at the hip. And I didn't put a neck and a head on these. You don't have to. It really depends. There's no hard rules, right or wrong on these. The other one I have a video already recorded for was doing detailed hands. So these are like twisting the floral wire into a pattern that's done with the hand. So let's take a look at that sheet here for a moment. There we go. So the hands, so we can see a little bit better. There we go. So this picture's in there as well. The hands are going to be let's see if we get like a solid white underneath it to show a little. Yeah, there we go. And a little more light. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, so the curve angles, like there's no straight lines anywhere on the human body. So we're starting off, most of you are going to be doing some organic humanoid creature, but some of you are going to do robots or, hard edge or Gundam or whatever. But if you're mimicking any sort of organic life form, you'll want to note that there's no straight lines. Like there's not a straight line across my knuckles. See, there's a curve there. Everything is a series of arcs. So you want to get those arcs down in the radial bends. So what I did was I took that hand, the basic hand, and then I measured it down to what size I want the hand for the Mushroom Queen character. Actually, that's what this one's going to go for. And then I just laid the wire out on top of that and measured it out. So I'll have that video up today, which would be handy to have. So I'm going to show you how to make those. And then the other important thing to consider making is just a basic layout diagram of different sizes of characters that you would typically want to make. So for this one, I'm using the female forms. I try and balance this out since almost all the literature for classic art anatomy books is all male dominated. So we're kind of doing this. So this would be an 8-inch sculpture, a little bit bigger than what you'll want to use, but you can do, whatever. So this is a 1/9 scale model or 1.33 inches per foot. You could look up toy figure and model sizes like standards for the industry. There's actually industry standards for that stuff. And then here's a full 1/6 scale model. That's a 12-inch. So this would be what size you would do for final. And you can see in here, let me actually get a black marker for this so we can see even easier. So where you want to mark your joints is really important. So you want to know where the knee bend is going to be in here, where the hip's going to be, the femur. And this actually goes up and into the socket here, right? So that's where it's actually going to bend. But you could go out here where the bony protrusion is, where they cross. And then from the wrist here to elbow. And then here to the shoulder. So this is where it's going to actually bend. We usually do a little piece here in a U shape. And that's to give a movement to the shoulder, which goes forward and backward with the scapula and the clavicle. And then so we go in here, and then this typically is going to go, again, the foot, you see I did a little side drawing of the foot, but the foot from the front view, if you're doing a construction sheet, you don't want that foot going down in perspective because you're constructing, you want to go and pull it off to the side. But that's where the ankle is going to go. And I went and skewed it a little bit more from my original ruler just to bring it in a bit. And every little bit counts more than you think. Like as you're going, if you get off, a 16th there and a 16th there, and then all of a sudden your legs are disproportional. It really throws you off. This goes up here to the center of the pelvis and then up. And usually we're going to go and do something up into the head and stop it right about at the forehead level. So I want to draw that into the face just because I'm going to detail that out some more. So these are two drawings that I would recommend you do in the coming weeks. You could even do one now. You don't have to because we're still getting loose and some people are still, brand new to stuff. But just get some graph paper out, draw a grid, decide what scale model you want to make, look up the proportions. Right now, we want you guys to focus on small speed sculpts and busts that are 4 to 7 inches. So that is a review of the resources you have available to you already and an overview of the steps and processes you're going to use to make your midterm size character and then into the final. Now for these ones, I had the bust that was 3D printed. This is a good size right here. So this one, if I have it measured here, is about 7 inches high. That's to be the maximum you'd want to do for the current assignment. And that's a 3D print though. So let's, I'll get into the digital stuff and post that one on my next video. But for the stuff you're doing right now is using your monster clay. You want to keep it, right here. So if we look at that one, yeah, he's about 5, including his little fin. He's been dropped a few times, about 5 to 6 inches tall. Okay, so that's all the size you need right there. And conserve your clay. Don't do some big giant monstrous thing right away. You're just gonna have to melt it down, and you might do something you like, and you might not want to melt it down right away. Here's the Yanti or the snake humanoid bust. I was gonna add some slots. I could actually add arms on there. You don't need to add arms to your bust. It's up to you. The arms you could give a shot at, but there's a struggle when you're first doing these to get the arms so they don't fall off and slump on you. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of these as well, and so you should have your stands ready to go. Okay, and before we do that, we're going to go step by step and do some of the wire sculpts. So for that, I'm going to bring up my the original or the current iteration of this mesh character. So you see it's a little different than what's down in the sketches. But if I were to scroll through, I think I have them refined. Yeah, so that's the one we're going to use for the pattern and color exploration. Then we're going to go into digital, and then we're going to go into the second character for after midterm. So I'll just leave that one up for you for now. So so this is pretty just happenstance. He's about 4 inches tall. So 4 to 7 inches now. If he was a little short guy, but he was super wide or super heavy or super blocky, just use your best judgment. Don't use up all your clay yet. You're just getting. For him, he's got the big giant mushroom cap head. So if I were to do a loop just for the head by itself, the spool of wire isn't even as wide as I need for, he's got a big head. So if I'm gonna do like a big discus or something like that, I might even take my X-Acto blade and foam core and do a little disc out of foam core and then attach that to a little, wire armature base so that I could pop it on and off and work on it and then set it back down on his head gently. So I'm gonna show you some techniques for that. Now, if you look in some of the other thumbnails, there's a whole variety of head sizes, so that'll be much easier to deal with, to explore without it kind of falling apart on me at this early stage. So let's take a look at that on our next section of the video. So we will be right back.